let's get into the NFL honors. We got, I'm pretty sure every award has now officially been announced. I'm telling you, I said this in the green room before we started. There were only 2 awards I saw because I came straight from the gym and I missed it. But the 2 I saw, I was like, nah, they got those both wrong. And I think it would be a great time to talk about it. And I'm sure that's why a lot of you are tuning in, because either the guy you won or you wanted to win won and you want a reaction, or you want somebody to say they got it wrong. Either way, we got you covered. So Rick, kick us off, buddy.
All right. So let's start off. We're pretty much just going to go through who won, what we think about it, right? So, I mean, let's start off with the biggest award of the night, Kyle. If you're cool with it, let's start off with the biggest award of the night, and that was NFL MVP.
Assistant coach of the year.
Okay. No, you're right. Assistant coach of the year. You're right. NFL MVP, quarterback of the Baltimore Ravens, Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson has been speculated to win two-time NFL MVP. Two-time the NFL MVP. He was speculated to win really ever since kind of week 14, week 15. Right around that time, it seemed to be clear that Lamar Jackson was going to get his second MVP. And then Kyle and I spoke about it, right? The NFL MVP nowadays, and a lot of people talk about it as well. I've heard it on podcasts, on NFL, everywhere. It seems to be which quarterback is the best on the best team the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season. That seems to be who's going to win MVP nowadays, really, right? And in this case, we got Prince Harry over here on the NFL honors. That's pretty sweet. But in this, well, did you?
I did at the Warrior games.
I am him.
So cool. They wouldn't tell us who it was because they said he's super VIP and he didn't want people to know. Because then the press will show up. Yeah. And he literally was sitting right in front of me. I could see his bald spot the whole entire time. And I'm like, this is so weird, dude. Life is weird. It's so cool though. Okay.
Yeah.
Continue. I'm sorry I made it about me, but it's a rare thing to meet Prince Harry,
At least it wasn't about the Broncos like Kyle usually does. It was Lamar Jackson.
Yet it's not.
not yet it's not. It was Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson was the guy who won. And again, we talked about it last 5 weeks. The best team, the quarterback usually is going to win it. We all know the quarterback position is one of the most important in sports. They touch the ball every game. They have to they have to memorize a large playbook, when to audible, what the defense is doing, how to go around the defense, all that stuff, man. So really the quarterback is the most important position, and the MVP just has become that. Not since Adrian Peterson has there been a non-quarterback, right? That has won that. So quarterback position, the most important, and Lamar Jackson, I think, to me, definitely deserve this award. Unfortunately, he's not in the Super Bowl right now because of that AFC Conference Championship game. But if we are going late season, best team, best quarterback, dynamic, it's going to be Lamar Jackson for MVP for me.
Yeah, Lamar Jackson, he was playing at a higher level, and where Dak Prescott kind of had that late season regression. Like you said, the last 4 games is kind of I think where the bread and butter is. It's a whole season award, but that last 4 games is where you separate from whoever you're competing with. So that was clearly between, in my opinion, there was Brock Purdy, there was Dak Prescott, and there was Lamar Jackson. And Lamar Jackson was just playing at a different level. Keep in mind, they were the clear favorite to win the Super Bowl. And Lamar now has as many MVPs as he has playoff wins.
Kyle, by the way, Kyle hates the Ravens. So, he just had to slip that one in there.
That was subtle, right? That was subtle.
I loved it.
Oh my God. Thanks for clipping that, Bill. And I hope Tom gets a lot of those today. Yeah, dude. I think that was probably one of the awards tonight that was just a matter of when. It wasn't if. We knew that it was going to go to Lamar. I think, was it unanimous?
That I actually don't know.
Let
I
me
do not
see.
know.
I'll look into it. I bet
Yeah.
there was one or two that went somewhere else.
Okay. Yeah. Because the head coaching one, and we'll get into that, it was very, very close. I mean, super close. You're talking about votes that were extremely close. That the coach of the year was one of those. So I don't know where I could find where the voting was, but somehow they knew what the coach of the year was. But I saw that on Twitter too. So I wonder if they'll have it up.
Lamar Jackson becomes the second youngest player to win multiple MVPs, sneaking past Brett Favre and Patrick Mahomes by mere months into a place behind, guess who? Jim Brown, who had 2 MVPs in his trophy case before he turned 23.
Oh my God.
Jim Brown had 2 MVPs before he was 23. That is
he's one of the goats.
Insane. Yeah, that is insane. Especially like I think we talked about this last year, but the MVP wasn't a quarterback award 30 years ago. It just wasn't. Like it
was not.
It could go to a quarterback, but I think it wasn't until the 80s where the John Elway, Joe Montana, Troy Aikman era, but before that it was really dominant running backs that were winning it a lot.
Yeah.
Even if you look at the NFL draft nowadays, the number 1 overall pick 9 times out of 10 is a quarterback. Yep. And even more, 3 of the top 5 picks usually are quarterbacks. And back then it was running backs that went number 1 overall.
Yeah.
So yeah, times have changed. But
times have definitely changed, man. Yeah, no, and I was gonna say, like, the whole running back first, second, third overall pick. I remember that time. I remember thinking you have to pick a running back. You have to pick a running back. Why? Because the NFL has changed a lot over the years. We've talked about it plenty of times. It's a quarterback league. It's a quarterback driven league. You want passing offense, and that's what the most exciting part is. It is just no longer a running back league. But I feel in a few years we're going to get around to that. But enough of that talk. MVP Lamar Jackson gets his second one of his career. Congratulations to him. Kyle, do you have anything else on Lamar Jackson winning MVP for the second time in his career before we move on to the next award?
No, just, congrats. And hopefully this is something that Lamar can build off of. I know because he's a dual threat, a lot of people have had concerns about durability and longevity. But here he is gaining 15 pounds so he can stay in the league longer. He puts on that weight and people are like, is he still going to be the same guy? I think this answers all those questions. He wins an MVP with the extra 15. I think he'll be here for a while. Oh yeah,
100,000 billion%. Let's move on, Kyle, to something you had mentioned earlier. This was, like he said, in the green room, he was talking about it, not very happy at all. Kevin Stefanski has won the Coach of the Year award. Congratulations to him. And Kyle, I'm going to throw it over to you because you have some strong feelings about who should actually win this award.
I do. And let me preface this with a serious and genuine congratulations to Stefanski, because what he did with the quarterback situation that went on in a first year, the way he had that team playing and fighting, it's not like he didn't deserve to win Coach of the Year. It's just that I believe that there was a coach more deserving. It's just like sometimes you just have to give it to one guy and somebody gets snubbed. But I think in this case, it was the wrong guy, because DeMeco Ryans should have won this award, in my opinion. He is a rookie head coach, and I know Stefanski was too, but the difference is Cleveland, with the situation that he was going into, a lot of people had Cleveland being a playoff team in the preseason. Yeah. So if you got 2 guys and you're kind of up in the air about them, I think you must look at what the preseason expectations were for the team and whether you met those or exceeded those. And I don't think that there was a coach in the entire league. Maybe you could make an argument for Matt LaFleur, what he did with Jordan Love. But still, it's not on the same level, in my opinion, as what Jahmyr Gibbs, what DeMeco Ryans did, man. You go to a new place. The expectations are nothing. CJ Stroud wasn't even the number 1 overall pick. You go ahead and select him at number 2 overall. You get Will Anderson Jr. You got to put together an entire staff. I mean, you are literally from top to bottom a brand new era. And it's not like how Stefanski came in and Deshaun Watson's there. It's not like he came in and Myles Garrett was there. Nick Chubb was there. And I know Nick Chubb got hurt, but he was there when he took the job. And Nick Chubb was there until he got injured. The Browns were, and you know how I felt. I had them in my top 5 week 4.
Yeah, you did.
I just thought, man, this is a really good team. They were coached well, but it was that defense. I think any team that has a top 5 defense is probably going to be in the playoffs. Let's be real. And the Texans didn't really have a top 5 defense. I think they were underrated when it comes to passing yards allowed per game. But let's be real. The Texans were not the most talented team in the league, and they didn't have all these weapons. Like before the season started, Nico Collins and Tank Dell weren't people that we were like, oh, you got to draft them in your fantasy league. So I think a great coach, what he does is he pulls the most out of his players. And whereas Stefanski did that, we already knew that those players were that talented, where I think everything that DeMeco Ryans did, if you're a Texans fan, you were pleasantly surprised. And I think what we saw this year is exactly, I guess, the example of what great coaching can do for your team. And it was DeMeco Ryans. It was his award. It was.
Yeah, and there's really nothing that I personally would disagree with what you're saying there, because DeMeco Ryans definitely deserve this. It's just you come into to this Houston Texans team that is still in recovery mode from the Deshaun Watson debacle. You know, him coming in, immediately becoming a star, taking them to the playoffs, this and that. Then he requests a trade, wants to get out of Houston. You do the trade for basically not much. And then you start over. For about a year or two, the Texans were not an organization that you thought in 2023 were going to get to the playoffs at all.
Yeah.
At all.
Not at all.
DeMeco Ryans comes in. Yes, you did have some stars from last year, sorry. Become valuable, right? You've the running back. I always forget his name. I don't do names. This is the only football podcast we don't do names.
No, we don't.
We don't do names. And then they pick up the other running back from the Bills, and they make him basically into a star. With DeMeco Ryans, their former player, he has that sort of Singletary. Yes, Singletary. And they got that sort of like, I don't know. I feel like when you get some former players to be coaches, the transition is almost seamless. And that's what kind of DeMeco Ryans was doing this year. And to do all that, to come into this organization, knowing the baggage it comes with, having to pick your own guys, having to hope this works, your second overall pick, because you could not get a trade done with the Bears last year for the number 1 overall, it's probably your second choice in CJ Stroud. And what does CJ Stroud do? He has one of the best seasons a rookie quarterback has ever had. He broke records. He had consistent play. He was just on top of his shit. So DeMeco Ryans, what he did in literally a season with that team is amazing. Now, I do also want to give some credit to Dan Campbell and what he has done with the Detroit Lions over his 3 seasons as a head coach. But I do think that overall, in the time given to both of those coaches, what D'Amico Ryans did in 1 year to get to the divisional round of the playoffs is just more impressive. Not to take anything away from Dan Campbell and what he has accomplished, and really kind of how he came into the Lions organization, another broken organization, really. What he did those first 2 years, slowly building that confidence with Detroit. Last season, he went on a really bad stretch, and I was a person who was like, they're gonna fire Dan Campbell. Someone like you was like, no way. Someone we talked to was a Lions fan, Alex. Hopefully, we're gonna have him on soon. Also was like, I don't think so. I don't think that is going to be the way we go with this. And credit to the owners of the Lions. They didn't do that. And now look where they're at. They got to the NFC Championship. He said some very tough truths at the end of hey, this may have been our only shot, but he does not believe so. And if Dan Campbell, your head coach, does not believe that this is the last time you're going to be able to have a shot to the Super Bowl, shit, fucking count me in on that team. That's for sure.
Yeah. And it's worth mentioning that Dan Campbell has done just such an incredible job taking over for the Lions. I mean, it will go down as a historical turnaround. And it's not just Dan Campbell, but it is everybody. And I think that's why Dan Campbell didn't win the award. It's not because it's not extremely impressive. It's because you could make a legitimate argument that the Lions are the second most talented team in the league. Whereas you look at the team that D'Amico Ryans took over, and it's just kind of a lot. Like when you said Singletary from Buffalo, when you said that, I thought you were going to go in a different direction. I thought you were going to say like that because you mentioned like when former players become coaches, they do a really good job.
Yeah,
but I think another way to look at it too is that sometimes when players don't feel appreciated and they get kicked to the curb and they kind of form an alliance together. Like you look at David Montgomery. Look at David Montgomery and what he's done for Detroit. Like you can't tell me that he doesn't have a little bit of fuck you in his running game. You look at Tank Dell, a very good receiver that we didn't even really know, and he wasn't even drafted till the 3rd round, 69th overall. So he had to see all these, these guys get drafted before him that, what was it last year? So like Jordan Addison and JSN, Zay Flowers. So
yeah.
There was a lot of that. And then Nico Collins, who really emerged as maybe the best receiver they have.
Yeah.
A lot of people didn't even know who he was until this year. This guy was drafted in 2021, and it's another 3rd round guy. And I think in 2021, that may be the year Justin Jefferson was drafted. I think that was a good wide receiver class.
Or 2020, one of those,
maybe 2020. But my point is like, none of these guys are really like stars. And even when you look at CJ Stroud, well, they are stars. But what I mean is like, they weren't recruited as stars, and they weren't drafted as stars. And Singletary, who ended up taking over as the starter when they had Dameon Pierce almost rush for 1,000 yards last season, or I think he did rush. He ran for over 1,000. He almost broke the single season rookie record for Houston.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And he would have if he didn't get hurt. But Singletary, a guy Buffalo says, nah, we don't want you anymore, comes over and plays a huge role in that team. So a lot of times I think when you're collectively getting a lot of players that are kicked to the curb, it takes true leadership to be like, you're not done yet. There is more to your story, and the best is yet to come, and I'm going to prove it. And that's exactly what D'Amico Ryans did. I think that team, when you looked at it in the beginning of the season, you're like, they don't have receivers. Oh, boy, were we wrong. They have receivers.
Yeah, they do.
It's just a bunch of 3rd round guys. And I think, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, wasn't Brandon Cooks on the Texans last year?
Yep. Yeah. Brandon Cooks was there last year, and they moved off of him, which was, turned out to be a really smart move. But I think when you look at this Houston team now, you're like, okay, well, if we're getting this much productivity from all of these players, imagine what we can do when we reload in April in the draft, or when
Yeah.
we reload in free agency. Because the one thing you don't have to look for is a quarterback. And even CJ could have a chip on his shoulder for not going number 1 overall. And you think, oh, that's not the same as going in the 3rd round. It's actually, maybe you could make an argument worse for a quarterback to go second when, they get into, look at Rodgers. He never forgot that Alex Smith was drafted before him,
That's true.
And he's not unique for that. Quarterbacks, I mean, there was certain quarterbacks that got drafted and they were angry because they fell. They weren't even happy. They were like, this is stupid that I had to sit around until 17 to get picked. Like, but that's the competitor in them. And, imagine, Rick, without a shadow of a doubt, because it turns out Rodgers was right. He was the best quarterback in that class. Imagine, you're the best and you're watching all these teams take other players. Like, there's a part of you that's going to be like, this is so bullshit. Like, what the hell? So, yeah, I love the chip that Houston kind of has. It's not there probably anymore because now there's going to be real expectations next year. And that's kind of why I have a problem with this, is because Detroit is too talented to give Dan Campbell Coach of the Year. And the Texans next year are going to be probably too talented to give it to D'Amico. And it was one of those where if it's like, if not now, then when? Because the team's only going to get more talented. And the I guess the amount of expectations that were exceeded this year, you can't repeat that again. It was a once in a couple decade type of turnaround.
Yeah, and now it becomes, like you said, an expectation, an expected success, a continuation. We have the same coach, we have the same players, we have the same this, we have the same that. Why can't we continue to win? And that's what happens. And I like this comment here by Crafty. The only thing Rodgers forgot was how to win championships. Oh, snap. So I love that. He did. He hated Alex Smith.
Crafty hates Aaron Rodgers.
That's true. I was going to say he hated Alex Smith, but he was never able to get past the 49ers. So
it's hard to win a Super Bowl.
It is very hard to win a Super Bowl. You're right. All right, Kyle. Let's move on to one of the I don't know how you feel about this one. It's Joe Flacco. And he won Comeback Player of the Year.
Don't like it.
I don't love it either. And Casey, this was funny. Steven Stefanski, that was hilarious. A Bears and a Packers fan, by the way, introducing that award, hilarious. But Joe Flacco, Kevin Stefanski won Coach of the Year, and Joe Flacco won Comeback Player of the Year. No, just no. One of the biggest things that was said when Flacco did finally come back to play for the Browns was this guy was sitting on his couch a month ago, blah, blah, blah. This guy didn't play football. Last time he played football was on a shitty Jets team. These guys don't answer phone calls to possibly be on teams and stay sitting on the couch. They don't. They don't just stay sitting on the couch. Joe Flacco is not sitting on a fucking couch. He was working out. He was throwing balls. How do you think that spiral has kept so crisp? This guy trains every day through the offseason, through the regular season, and fields calls from teams that need a quarterback. In a year where tons of quarterbacks are getting in, tons of backups are getting opportunities, and it just so happens that the Browns lost their franchise quarterback. I don't like this as the Comeback Player of the Year award. I really don't. And Joe Flacco, for what he did, he took a Browns team that was struggling quite a bit and was able to take them into the playoffs. Albeit it was a really bad game that they played against the Texans in the wild card round. And Joe Flacco had quite a bit of interceptions, not only then, but even through the regular season games he was playing. But Comeback Player of the Year, again, impressive what he did. I just think that at the end of the day, Baker Mayfield should have won this award. And to me, I don't think it should. I think it should have been a no-brainer. Now we can talk about DeMar Hamlin, what he is accomplished coming back from last year's, terrible incident.
He's a warrior.
He's a warrior, 100%. But Baker Mayfield came into this year not really again, they brought him to the Bucks. This is post Brady, post championship type of football, but with still a lot of good players. And they brought in Baker Mayfield, but they never said when they brought in Baker Mayfield, he is going to be the starter. They said we're going to have a competition. We're going to see who wins. And Baker Mayfield, luckily, well, really mostly through his play and through his hard work, won the starting job. He won the starting job, and look what happened. The Bucks won the division. Yes, it was the NFC South. It was a shitty division. They still won their division. They hosted the Eagles, who were in the Super Bowl last year, who still have a ton of the same players, and absolutely destroyed them in the divisional round, or in the wild card round. Sorry. And then they go into the divisional round and put up a hell of a performance against the Lions. And Baker Mayfield, who was the one who put him there? It was Baker Mayfield, man. So comeback player of the year, Joe Flacco won it. Again, impressive what he's done those few weeks. But to do what Baker did for an entire year, kind of go under the radar, I even get criticized for some of his plays, some late game interceptions, unable to take his team down the field to win games. He had a hell of a fucking season, statistically, and what they accomplished in the playoffs. So for me, it's Baker Mayfield, comeback player of the year.
Okay. I am right there with you, dude. I don't know if we're going to agree on everything today, but so far we're undefeated.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Joe Flacco comes in, throws for 1,616 passing yards in 6 games. His first game that he came in was what was his first game? I just had it up. Well, his last game was against Houston. And that was a first round bounce out of the playoffs. And I know this isn't a playoff award, but take it for what it's worth. He did get bounced out of that game, where Cleveland went into that game as a favorite.
Yeah.
The other thing is that when you look at Baker Mayfield, and if you just look at what he was able to do for Tampa when it looked like, Tampa, New Orleans, Atlanta, we don't know who's going to make it out. And then clearly a separation happens. Now, that separation that took place wasn't just against scrubs. Mind you, there was a couple scrubs in there, no offense, but like Riddler and some other guys that won't be starting next year. But what about Derek Carr? Derek Carr is a solid quarterback, and what you saw was, and guess what? Derek Carr, he was a first-year player as well, and a lot of people thought, the Saints are going to be good. The Saints are going to be good. It's totally possible. He was not that great. Right? He was 3,878 passing yards. He had 25 touchdowns, and they played the same amount of games, but Baker was 9th in the league in passing yards per game. He was only one spot behind CJ Stroud, less than 100 yards behind him. And CJ Stroud threw for 23 touchdown passes. Baker threw for 28 touchdown passes. Baker Mayfield threw for the 7th most touchdown passes. If you look at his QBR, Baker Mayfield was ranked not too low. Here he is, 19. But you know what? There's a lot of getting to know your receivers and stuff like that. Like Tom Brady didn't click with his players right away either. It happened later in the season. Baker came in to a situation where they said, yeah, we'll give you a year, and we'll probably end up drafting a quarterback next year. This was just a 1-year stop for him, and he turned into, in passing yards, a top 10 quarterback. In touchdowns, a top 5 or top 7 quarterback. Baker Mayfield had a fantastic season, and we're not even considering the fact that this was his first year and that he got kicked out of Cleveland. And he went to Carolina, where he had to go work for Matt Rule, who, was it Matt Rule or...
for the Panthers, I think it was Matt Rule. Yeah.
And then, that whole dumpster fire. So when you consider Baker's career, like, let's have a little bit of empathy here. He got drafted to an organization where they were saying, don't go there. Everything about that organization is completely dysfunctional. And he said, no, I'm going to go. And he went there, brought him to a playoff game, and they kicked him to the curb for you know who. Then they send him to Carolina, which was probably the worst place they could have sent him. And not only do they end up trading him, the coach gets fired. That's a dumpster fire. They send him to the Rams, where, of course, Matthew Stafford's over there. So what are we doing? I'm a backup now?
Yeah.
And he comes in, he makes the most of his opportunity. That one game where he goes in on Thursday night, he didn't even have what was it? He didn't have cleats yet,
or something like that. Yeah, the helmet.
Yeah, he didn't even have his stuff, and he went out there, game-winning touchdown drive, just enough for a team to go, man, maybe there is something there. Let's find out. Now, what the true intentions of Tampa, we'll never know. Was it really that they believed in him, or was it more about what do you call when you want him to lose every game?
Just like hate, or
no, when you
tanking.
Yeah. Was it about tanking? Was it that they really believed in him? It doesn't really matter, because Baker proved them to be either right or wrong. Baker came and he performed extremely well. He won a playoff game against the team that was the favorite to win the Super Bowl starting the season. And then he took that team on the road, and that was against the Lions, and they played the Lions really tough. The Lions probably should be in the Super Bowl right now, a historic choke for them. And they almost beat the Lions. Are you telling me Baker potentially was just a couple bounces away from a Super Bowl? I mean, this is way different than Joe Flacco coming into a situation where you got one of the best defenses in the league, so you're owning time of possession. A lot of Joe Flacco's yards, you'll notice that he did have a lot of 3 and outs. It was just that the defense would get the ball back. They'd get the ball back. Eventually, you're going to get the ball downfield. And that's why, and I'll pat myself on the back here, I said, once this playoffs thing starts, that we're going to see who Joe Flacco is.
Yeah.
He's going to remind everybody who he is. And he did. And I know that doesn't come into the equation for the voters because it's postseason, but come on, like, how in the world is Baker Mayfield not at least winning that award? I mean, but could you make an argument that it's not a comeback, that he didn't really go anywhere?
I think that may be one of the reasons why they go with Flacco. Flacco was not playing to start the season. Baker was. The thing with Baker, in my eyes, is, again, gets basically thrown out of Cleveland. Hey, we're actually going to go with Deshaun Watson, by the way. See ya, man. I hope you find a job, right? Goes to Carolina. Whatever happens there happens. Goes to LA. Has that great Thursday night football game, which will always stay in my memory because that's when we got first rated by Tom Grossi. Has that amazing game. Then goes to Tampa. And to me, that says a lot, because it was almost like that one game in LA was like, oh shit, Baker totally has it. He still totally has it. Then he gets sent to the Bucs, and just like Nick's saying here, he was competing with Kyle Trask. And then what does he do? We talked about the NFC South not being a great division. He wins the 5 out of the last 6 games of this season,
including a perfect QBR in Lambeau.
36.
And the Packers were hot.
34-20. They killed it, and it was because of Baker Mayfield. Not only did he bring the Bucs back into the postseason when this was another team that looked to be in the rebuilding year, 100%. That I was one person who said Derek Carr to the Saints. Saints are going to win it, and look what happened. Baker Mayfield wins the last 5 out of the 6 games in the regular season, hosts a playoff game, wins that playoff game, and plays a very, very tough game against the Lions. And like you said, a couple bounces here and there. They're the ones in the NFC Championship, and who knows how that can go. So I don't know. Again, to me, yes, you can make the argument that he technically didn't go anywhere. But really, as football fans, I think we all know that he wasn't anywhere last season, and he came to the Bucs and performed.
Yeah, I agree. And I only bring it up because I'm trying to find where the disconnect is. And
Mm-hmm.
the last thing I'll say, and I really think this is kind of like a major nail in the coffin here. Cleveland was in 2022 with Nick Chubb. They were one of the best running teams in the league. They
Yeah.
were 5th in the NFL, 146 rushing yards per game in 2022, almost 150
Oh my
per game.
God.
Only Chicago had more, or Chicago, Atlanta, Baltimore, Philly, and then Cleveland. And yeah, Nick Chubb gets hurt, but still, Cleveland with that offensive line, maybe the best offensive line in the league, they were still over 100 yards rushing. But where are they? 115 rushing yards per game. They're in the top half of the NFL. So if you're trying to judge like a player's impact, I like to look at the team and be like, okay, well, how much of the weight is on this guy's shoulder? Because if you're able to run the football effectively, then all of a sudden that opens up the passing game. All of a sudden the separation the receivers are getting is a lot more. It's just, it all works together. But when you can't run the football and you are one dimensional and you're a first year guy, wow. Tampa was ranked 31st in rushing yards per game this season. Their rushing attack did not exist. They were the worst team in the league running the football. So what does that mean? That means everything was on Baker. That's why Baker led the NFL in passing attempts, or was top 5 in passing attempts. I just had it up, but that's why you saw he was top 10 in completions, because he was constantly, and then you look at that quarterback rating and you're like, oh, he's 12. But think about it. When you're throwing the ball 40 times a game, there's going to be more incompletions than the Brock Purdy throwing 22 passes a game and running the football 20 times a game. So Baker was really everything to this Bucs team. And I'm not discrediting like Chris Godwin and Mike Evans and Auden, but they didn't have a running game, which means teams were sitting back and they were focusing on Mike Evans. They were focusing on Godwin, and they said, beat us by passing the football, and we're going to be ready for it. And it was up to Baker to still find tight windows and to make Mike Evans have the kind of season he did, where he broke historical records this season, 10 1,000-yard seasons in a row, even though they were one-dimensional. That, to me, is the most impressive part of this entire thing. One-dimensional, and Baker Mayfield found a way to get it done.
Yeah, and that was with me expecting Rachaad White to have a really good season, which in the passing game, I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, oh, the Bucs don't have a good running back. Rachaad White's going to be the featured back, blah, blah, blah.
Because I think
like you
week
said,
1 and 2, he got out. Week 1 and 2, he killed it, right?
Yeah, it was like something like that. It was like, oh, shit, here comes Rachaad White. I told you.
Did you draft him?
I did. I drafted him in fantasy, and I was like, oh, here we go. Let's go. We're going to do this.
Well, I remember you telling me that, and I remember week 3, I was like, Rick's a genius.
Yeah. And
like, he's the only one that saw this one coming. And then, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let's go to one that maybe we might agree on, maybe not. I think we will. Offensive Player of the Year, Christian McCaffrey. Sorry, I'll fix that. Christian McCaffrey is the winner of the Offensive Player of the Year award. And, you know, for me, for what Christian McCaffrey has gone through, injuries, being in Carolina, more specifically, being traded to the San Francisco 49ers last year and going all the way to the NFC Championship against the Eagles. I mean, eventually losing, but now this year going to the Super Bowl, and what he's been able to do for that offense, he just becomes another important piece to the San Francisco 49ers offense. To me, he is the Offensive Player of the Year. It's probably the closest you can get to an MVP if you are a non-quarterback. And really one of those conversations was, is it Tyreek or is it Christian McCaffrey? And Christian McCaffrey seems to have been, you know, one of those key players really in the NFL, one of the best all-around running backs in the NFL, just does amazing things as well in the pass game. And then you look over at Tyreek, and this guy was slated to have 2,000 receiving yards, something that has never been done for a receiver. And he's doing it with Tua as his quarterback in a team which he has Waddle on the other side, Raheem Mostert rushing for the most touchdowns. So Tyreek, again, another impressive player, but to me, it was always Christian McCaffrey. Kyle, what did you think about Offensive Player of the Year award going to McCaffrey, CMC?
I agree. I agree with it.
Yeah.
And this one, like I said, there was a part of me that wanted CMC to maybe win MVP, but it was too difficult because there's so many great players over there. It's hard to say that this is the one guy that is doing it all, but you could make a serious case if you had to say that about anybody. CMC would be that guy. Like if that MVP award went to any non-quarterback, it was definitely going to CMC, I think. And you look at what he was able to do this year. And I think the difference between what he did this year and what we've seen, first off, this was his first season playing with the 49ers. And I know that he went out of his way to say, I just wanted to, God, dude, he's such a humble guy. You know what he said? He said, I wanted to thank the 49ers, and I'm not quoting this directly, but I want to thank them for taking a chance on me and basically acknowledging the injury concerns in his past of being hurt, which as somebody with his talent level, he could very easily just been like, hey, when I'm on the field, I'm so good that it doesn't matter if I'm hurt sometimes. I'm worth it. Instead, he's like, I know I was getting hurt a lot, and he's self-aware. He's self-aware. And when you look at the 2,000-yard seasons, and we saw other people like Derrick Henry win it, I think there was only 8 total players that won that many 2,000 2,000 rushing yards.
2,000.
So what year? I think it was 2023 that the NFL extended to an 18-game season, correct?
You said 2000, which one?
Like, was it last year or the year before?
It was, I think it was the year before.
The only reason I bring it up is because sure, there's other players that did it, and you could say, yeah, but there's one extra game with the 49ers. But keep in mind, CMC sat out the last week of the season, and he still led the NFL in rushing yards and still went over 2,000 yards rushing, which he is one of the only 8 to do it, right? That's like historical territory. And I feel like when Derrick Henry did it, when I think Chris Johnson did it, I know Adrian Peterson did it, probably one of the greats, whether it's Walter Payton or Barry Sanders or maybe even Earl Campbell or somebody like that. Those guys might have done it too, but Christian McCaffrey as a wide receiver is a whole nother thing. Yeah. Like, he's not just a running back. And all of those guys, Adrian Peterson, sure, he would break a swing pass for 90 yards once in a while. But CMC is like a legitimate part of the receiving game plan. He's averaging 7 catches per game. I looked it up yesterday. And he's averaging around 40 receiving yards per game, which adds up over time. That's not a little bit.
Jesus.
And it's probably the most receiving yards, the highest average for running backs this season. So yeah, CMC is a totally different player. And if you really want to look into it, and we might not talk about this as much as we would because of Cam Newton, but let's not let the media get in our heads. Let's just talk about the truth and leave it at that.
We are the media.
The other one. The
bad one.
The bad ones. We tell the truth here. Well, because sometimes like Cam will, you get mad at somebody for saying something and then you overcompensate on the other side, but you forget a little truth over here. The CMC getting acquired, I think week 6 last year. And the 49ers didn't lose again, like that whole year. So yeah, you look at how they started that season. I believe they were 2-3 by week 5, and then they acquired CMC and never lost again.
Yes. And that was also as well, not only with CMC, but that was kind of like right around the time Brock Purdy took over as well. So yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, you can make a real argument that CMC is kind of the heart and soul of this team. That when they acquired CMC, they forever turned into a force in the NFL that nobody could stop.
Yeah.
And the only reason I say like we might not bring it up as much is because Cam said all that stuff about how Brock's being carried by the team. No, that's bullshit. But CMC is definitely a reason, a big reason that the 49ers have had the kind of success that they've had. I don't know what they would look like without him, but we can look at what the 49ers were uh, before him, but then you also are predating Brock Purdy. So it gets a little weird. But there's no doubt that CMC is he's definitely the most valuable running back in the NFL. He is the most dynamic weapon that exists right now in the NFL.
Yeah.
And ever since the 49ers acquired him, they won every single game until they didn't have a quarterback in the playoffs. And then now they're in the Super Bowl. So I don't know if anyone disagrees, but when you really look at that for what it's worth, you have a strong case, not for Offensive Player of the Year, for MVP. And that is why I have zero issues with this.
Love it. Love it. Let's move on to one that you definitely have issues with, Kyle. We're going to move on to Defensive Player of the Year winner, Myles Garrett. There was a ton of discourse on Twitter, on X, formerly known as Twitter, about Myles Garrett winning. Defensive Player of the Year, again, is the closest you can get to an MVP, but on the defensive side. And these are the guys that make a huge, huge difference on your defense. Without them, the defense goes to shit. It doesn't really function almost as one unit. It really does seem like these guys are the anchors. And Myles Garrett did an amazing job this year. Coming into the year, he was definitely like one of those guys that was talked about becoming the Defensive Player of the Year. But Kyle, you and I think, agree on who should have won it. And I'm going to let you go ahead on who should have won Defensive Player of the Year.
It's got to go to TJ Watt.
Yeah.
TJ Watt, especially when you look at the fact that the Steelers had to fire their OC. Kenny Pickett was playing like crap, and then he got hurt, and then they had to put in a third string quarterback that is a third string quarterback for a reason. And it was TJ Watt the whole time. Yep. And if you look at the win-loss record when TJ Watt's not playing, I think at one point they were like 1-6, and with him they were 7-2 or something insane like that.
And
but
I think after all that too, it's like they became 1-10 without TJ Watt in the lineup or something like that.
Insanely. I mean, and the reason is because TJ Watt puts his fingerprints on every single play. You might not think he did because he didn't sack the quarterback, but he leveled 2 offensive linemen so the linebacker could come make a clean hit. He is nasty. He gets tips, he gets picks, he gets strip sacks, and he gets sacks. He is the most dynamic weapon. And yes, Myles Garrett is pretty close with him. But here's what the numbers say. Myles Garrett this season had 42 tackles. TJ Watt had 68. Myles Garrett had 33 solo. TJ Watt had 48 solo. Myles had 14 sacks. TJ Watt had 19. 19 sacks is a shit ton. Myles Garrett had 37 pressures. TJ Watt had 50. This guy, it's just crazy to me.
The numbers speak for themselves.
Yeah, the numbers are just ridiculous. Myles Garrett had 16 QB hits, and I'll just say the number instead of the whole thing again. TJ Watt, 18. 17 tackles for a loss for Myles, 19 tackles for a loss for Watt. 4 forced fumbles, so did TJ Watt. 1 fumble recovery, TJ had 3. 0 picks, TJ got 1. 3 pass deflections, he hit 8. 0 touchdowns, he had 1. So I just have to say, like, there should never be a situation where a player is giving the player an award because he hasn't won one yet.
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. It does
Mhm.
not matter if TJ Watt dominates the defensive side of the ball. If he does this every year, he should win it every year. There should never come a time where we get bored of giving the award to the right person. And that goes for Patrick Mahomes. That goes for whoever. We don't see that kind of domination in the NFL very often. Aaron Donald is one of those players, but TJ Watt really has emerged, and there's nobody that even compares to him in talent. Yes, Myles Garrett compares to him, but if you really take a look at the productivity of what they both did, yes, Myles Garrett was insane, but TJ Watt was on a whole nother level, and they got this one wrong.
Yeah, and I actually really like this comment here by Crafty. TJ and Micah carried their defenses. Garrett disappeared for entire games. One of those games he disappeared in was against the Bears.
And Broncos. He had 0 sacks.
And Broncos. It's just, if TJ Watt is playing against the Bears and the Steelers defense, he's going to make a noise. Like you said, he had his fingerprints all over the offense every time he played the game. Every time. So, I would even kind of like Crafty said, I would even probably give it to Micah Parsons over Myles Garrett. It just seemed like as we got to the tail end of the season, it was Myles Garrett just wasn't a force that he was at the beginning of the year. And now look, a lot of things to consider, right? A lot of things to consider. Injuries, guys not feeling 100% throughout the entire season. Maybe not going hard every single play can do that. But if that is the case, you're going to tell me that TJ Watt and Micah Parsons were 100% throughout the entire. No, none of these guys are 100% at any point in the season except week 1. And even then, maybe they fucking stepped out of the tub wrong and their pinky toe is weird. You know what I mean? Like, so throughout the season, you're going to have injuries, you're going to have aches, you're going to have pains. I don't know this. I have heard players say this. So, this is just secondhand information I'm getting from actual NFL players, but regardless, it happens throughout the season. And for Myles Garrett to win the award after really disappearing in important moments in the Texans playoff game, like Crafty said, you don't give it to him. You don't. You give it to TJ Watt, who without him have one of the worst records in the NFL without a defensive player, without one single defensive player. It's TJ Watt all day. And he tweeted about it. He said, I'm used to this, something along those lines. So he knows he did. So he knows that
it's like they're bored of him or something.
There's something about it, man. He has been very dominant. Again, injuries are a thing. I agree. Injuries can be a thing that affects it, but he was fine this year. He was all over the fucking field. So give it to TJ Watt because, fucking Myles Garrett didn't deserve it.
Yeah. And it's very simple. Look at CMC, leads the NFL in rushing yards, offensive player of the year. You got Lamar Jackson, had a season that was clearly just better than everybody. Like the award for the most part, there are awards that are what do you call it? Discretion, right? Or not discretion, but like it can be interpreted by subjective awards.
Oh, subjective, yes.
Now this award to me is an objective award. This isn't one that you really have to put your heart into. More you have to put your head into the stat book. And they got this one super wrong. And by the way, you said Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons was closer to TJ Watt's level of but not even in one category did even Micah Parsons beat out TJ Watt. So TJ Watt beat both of them, and Micah Parsons beat out Myles Garrett in almost every category. So, like, if anything, it's not even that Myles Garrett wasn't the right winner. He's not even the right second place winner. And I'm not trying to sound like a hater because I actually love Myles Garrett. Absolutely love him.
Same. I do. He's a monster.
He is a monster. His body is sculpted. Like,
yes.
I've never seen someone look like that.
Yeah.
And he's awesome, but
Mhm.
this is not a popularity award. This is a productivity award, and yeah, no one was as productive as TJ Watt.
No, not at all. Not at all. But let's move.
Sorry. I was just
What's
going to
up?
say Watt did win the award in 2021, just as a reminder. He
Mhm.
led the NFL with 19 sacks. But this is what they're saying. But Garrett had the better all-around season for the NFL's top-ranked defense. So they're basically saying because the Browns had a top-ranked defense and Myles Garrett was the best player on it, kind of like how you said quarterback goes to the best team. Who's the quarterback?
Yeah.
They did that, but I don't think it's the same at all.
No, I don't think so either. But I think Nick is onto something here. He threatened to hit the voters with their helmet if he didn't get one. So there it is. There you have it. That's why Myles Garrett won. He was going to threaten to hit them. Let's move on to the next one. We're going to get to our rookies of the year. And one team swept it. One team swept the rookie awards. I wonder who. Maybe their head coach got snubbed for coach of the year. I don't. But let's start off with offensive rookie of the year, Kyle. Who could it have been? Oh yeah, it was the Texans. CJ Stroud wins offensive rookie of the year. We talked about it earlier when we were talking about coach of the year and how D'Amico Ryans got snubbed. But CJ Stroud had arguably one of the best rookie seasons for a quarterback in the history of the NFL. He came into an organization that, again, was really in the pits, just hiring a brand new rookie head coach, kind of trying to find itself, getting talent wherever they could get it from, bringing in free agents that weren't huge names. You're bringing a defensive-minded head coach when a lot of these offensive head coaches are the ones that are winning Super Bowls, but the Texans said, we're going to go with D'Amico Ryans, former player. And then number 2 overall, they get CJ Stroud as their quarterback, Ohio State University product. Seems to be one of the best quarterbacks ever to come out of Ohio State. Still hoping for Justin Fields, but one of the best quarterbacks ever.
Next year.
We'll do it. For out of the Ohio State University. So he had a hell of a season, and he is your offensive rookie of the year. Kyle, I don't think we disagree on that one. I'm going with CJ Stroud all day.
Yeah, he should have been unanimous, and I was trying to see if I could see if he was or not. I don't see that he was, because normally if it is, they definitely mention it. It's a big deal, but I think he should have been. I just what he did was crazy. I mean, you talk about a quarterback comes out, and usually you're trying to gauge how is this quarterback doing for a rookie. That is always the quotations that goes between judging a quarterback's performance that's a rookie. And we got to a point before the midway through the season where we were like, okay, forget about the for a rookie. Let's just remove that. CJ Stroud's playing some of the best quarterback play of any quarterback. Whether you want to include Mahomes, I mean, he was outplaying everybody. And you know what? He didn't run. For a guy that doesn't watch a ton of college football, I don't know why, but I assume that because he's athletic, I thought like maybe he would run. It's not really a part of his game. He doesn't really run the football, and he did all of this with his arm. And he made 2 receivers that we mentioned. He made them wide receiver ones. He took this team into the playoffs. He won a game where he was an underdog against the top-ranked defense, a game Myles Garrett didn't have a sack. So, just saying.
Just saying. You would think Myles Garrett was on the Ravens over here with Kyle.
No, I just they get when you get it wrong, it's our job to shit talk. But
I agree.
Yeah, Stroud he should have been unanimous. He had 4,000 passing yards, 4,108. He had 23 touchdowns, only 5 picks. A passer rating of 100.8, third best by a rookie in history. Stroud led the league in passing yards per game, 273.9, and he had the best touchdown to interception ratio at 4.6, becoming just the 3rd player in NFL history to finish first in both categories. Who did he join? Joe Montana and Tom Brady.
Oh my God.
So yeah, should have been unanimous, but not sure if
Yeah.
it was.
And I think really, you said unanimous. It's a quarterback. It's the most important position in sports. But we got to give credit to Puka Nakua and what he was able
Oh
to do.
yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? Like offensive rookie of the year. I think him getting votes totally, called for. Um, But again, it's the quarterback position that is the most important. But Puka Nakua, man, Jesus Christ, broke the rookie record for yards, I believe, or receptions. One of those things was breaking it in the first 5 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it was. You knew from the get-go that this guy was going to be special in LA. And also, by the way, you've got a future Hall of Fame quarterback, Matthew Stafford, throwing him the ball. He's
And
going to
future
be
Hall of Famer Cooper Kupp.
and future Hall of Famer Cooper Kupp playing wide receiver 1 on the other side of him. So you know that Puka Nakua is special. The relationship that Stafford had with Cooper Kupp the year they won the Super Bowl was amazing. And yet here we are 2 years later, Puka Nakua looking like a wide receiver 1, probably going to be wide receiver 1 next season. Cooper Kupp, in my opinion, will take a step back. I think with that all being said, man, he definitely deserves some votes. Again, I'm going CJ Stroud all day, but Puka Nakua definitely second place for me.
Yeah, and if CJ Stroud doesn't have like that kind of history, Joe Montana, Tom Brady type year as a rookie, then I think Puka Nakua does win this, because you look at what we said earlier about expectations preseason versus what he actually ended up accomplishing. He like, this was shocking to everybody, including him, because today when they asked him about it, he said, "It's incredible. I still haven't wrapped my head around the fact that we're even here right now." So you see the humility in him, just kind of soaking up this moment and enjoying it. Another honorable mention, of course, Kobe Turner. They walked on the red carpet together as finalists. Puka was with his girlfriend, Haley Ayano. They look beautiful. They look happy. And
Hot, yep.
it's, yeah, super, super hot. But
Super
yeah,
hot.
it's just so cool, man, to see somebody that was not even a thought around the league. And now here he is. And he broke all the records that he broke. I could list them all, but I won't. But the fact that he himself is like, I'm in disbelief. Like, someone pinched
Yeah.
me. And,
Yeah.
he still had, it's not even like a chip. It's just like, I'm just happy to be here. It's like, I'm accidentally just better than everyone, it seems like, and it's not an
Yeah.
accident. He probably works his ass off, and
Oh,
he's
yeah.
put in the work. He's a smart kid. He went to a really good college, and he was in the books. He's just a very well-rounded person, and definitely tip your hat to Sean McVay and the staff for the Rams for finding a gem in the third round.
100%. And let's
Was
move
it
on to
fourth or fifth or third round?
Kyron Williams was the 5th rounder, I believe, and I think
Okay.
Puka was the 3rd.
I've been getting too much stuff wrong today. I'm sorry, guys. I've
No, you're
been
fine.
corrected twice.
I might be wrong, but I think that was the order. I think Kyron Williams was the 5th rounder. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, he was drafted in the fifth round. So I
Nakua?
was wrong. Yeah, 177th overall. So I mean, even more mind blowing, right?
Yeah, it's just the talent you find in those later rounds. It really does make those 5th, 6th rounds like valuable. Like the NFL is one of those where even in the 6th round, you find yourself a candidate for offensive rookie of the year. It's ridiculous.
In golf, they say driving's for show, putting's for dough. And it's
Hey,
like in drafting, it's like, of course you're going to hit your first round. The first round's for show. The fifth round's for dough. The best franchises know how to draft in the late rounds.
God, and I think Ryan Poles for the Bears. I think he's on there. I think he's on that. So, but regardless, first rounds for show, first rounds for dough for the Houston Texans, because Will Anderson Jr. wins the Defensive Rookie of the Year award. These guys were picked. CJ Stroud and Will Anderson were picked mere single-digit picks apart from each other in last year's draft. So, for the Texans, front office, GM, scouting department, they hit twice in the first round. It's ridiculous. So they hit twice in the first round, and both of those picks show up for it. Will Anderson had an amazing season for a rookie. And let me just bring up his stats unless you have them, Kyle. But he played a ton of games. He was a huge force there on the Texans defensive side for the entire season. And it was actually someone that I was kind of on the fence about the Bears picking between him or Jalen Carter. And Jalen Carter was also in this award section, and I'm positive he got some votes. But just to look at some of the stats for Will Anderson Jr., 15 games, 29 tackles, 16 assisted. He had 7 sacks for 48 sack yards, an absolute force in that defensive line. And the Texans really, with these 2 picks, it just goes to show that, you pick one on the offense, you pick the defensive end on the defense. Those are like the 2 of the 3, I think, in my opinion, biggest moves you can make in the draft on your defensive line. Obviously at a quarterback. And I think the other one is your offensive line. They have a pretty solid offensive line there in Houston, but the pick they made with CJ Stroud and Will Anderson Jr., it's just, they hit twice, and it's just good for them, man. But Will Anderson Jr., defensive rookie of the year winner.
And I feel like the moment that trade up happened and they selected Stroud and Will Anderson, we knew that it was going to work. Like we were like, oh wow, they just changed their whole franchise. Like who cares what you have to give up if you're able to add that? And what the Texans have now done by having an offense and a rookie or a defense rookie of the year, both in the same class. They're only the 4th team since 1967 to do that. In 1967, the Lions did it with Mel Farr and Lem Barney, and that Lions team actually became the first team to beat the first AFL team to beat an NFL team. Or no, the Broncos beat the Lions 13-7 to become the first AFL team to beat an NFL team. But the Lions, they had a decent year. And then the other team, 2017 Saints with Alvin Kamara. And they also had Marshawn Lattimore.
That's who, okay.
And they were in the playoffs. Minneapolis Miracle is what happened. And that ended like that. And then only last year it happened again. So, how we've been talking about how it seems like players are coming out more pro ready than ever. Back-to-back seasons, we've had that one team win offense and defense rookie of the year. Last year, Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner both won it.
Jets.
For the Jets. And the difference between, I guess, the Texans, the Jets, the Saints, and the Lions is that CJ Stroud was a quarterback, and that's why Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner, they couldn't really escalate their team the way a quarterback can. So the Texans are kind of in their own category because they're the 4th team to do it, but they're the first team to do it by drafting a quarterback. So,
and that part reminded me a little bit of what the Browns did like years ago. And this is just one of those core memories that I had because I really did like Notre Dame coming up, and I really did like the quarterback. Now I'm forgetting his name.
Oh, I know
with
who you're
Joe
talking
Thomas.
about.
They drafted Joe Thomas.
Yeah.
After they drafted that Notre Dame quarterback, Quinn.
I know who you're talking. Brady Quinn.
Brady Quinn.
He used to live on Las Olas when I lived in Fort Lauderdale. I worked at the Starbucks. He would come in. He lived on that road. Yeah. Wow. That was before he signed. He just got done playing. And he wasn't a broadcaster yet, working for the media. But I remember they were like, "Is that Brady Quinn?" And everyone was like, "God, he's fucking gorgeous." And it was it was literally a bunch of dudes, just like that's a great looking guy.
Smash.
But
for sure. And it's like the Browns are trying to do that because they're like, we're going to get our quarterback of the future and we're going to get our offensive tackle of the future. Clearly, it didn't work out with Brady Quinn. It did work out with Joe Thomas. But it just seems that the Texans, man, they hit one premier player on each side of the ball, offensive rookie and defensive rookie of the year. Like, hats off to the Texans, man. They are just seeming to get everything right. The pieces are in place right now for them to have extended success. And we love them now, but in about 3 years, we are going to absolutely fucking hate their guts. We are going to hate their guts because guess what? That's just how shit happens. Look at Mike McDaniel. Everybody's starting to hate Mike McDaniel. I feel like just a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that's what the Texans are in store for the next 3 years. But hey, people hate you. You must be doing something
right. If you ain't
right.
got haters, you ain't popping.
Ain't popping.
The final thing I'll say about it is that CJ Stroud, and that obviously me personally, my personal beliefs, I'm a Christian, and I know CJ Stroud grew up like very he went to did you watch the Snoop Dogg movie on Amazon? It's
no, I don't think so.
It's about his it just came out. It's really funny. But it's about Snoop Dogg's passing academy where he goes to the inner city in LA and he is, he's coaching Pop Warner, and CJ Stroud was one of the kids in his league. And
wow.
Yeah, the NFL actually gave the Pop Warner team the whole, because it was a whole league that he created. They gave him the NFL rights. So he was a Steeler in Pop Warner. And if you actually look after Snoop Dogg released the movie last week, he went on Rich Eisen to promote it. And he talked about CJ Stroud, and he really talked about who he is and his character. And I really do think, I think one of the things that separates CJ Stroud is that he's laser focused and he's mature beyond his years, and he grew up just in a really, really, like, I'm not going to let where I'm from or the struggles that I'm having affect me. He persevered through all that. And even when he got drafted, Snoop said he came after a preseason game to one of my shows, and he was like, I could tell, like, he wasn't drinking, he wasn't partying, he was like, he had his playbook, he's like studying and stuff. So I think that hard work pays off. And I think his upbringing and the way he carries himself as a man is part of the reason that he's having kind of unparalleled success. But that's just something I wanted to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think true too, your perseverance, how hard you work, the sort of the responsibility and maturity you put on yourself. Why do you think Brady was able to have such success over a long period of time? Because he himself put himself through a crazy workout regimen, had his people that, put him through that workout regimen, through a diet. He was a vegan, I believe, or something like that.
Yeah.
Like a vegetarian.
Super straight. He won't eat bread, pizza, beer, none of that.
Yeah, it's like that stuff. Like those are the things you have to go through to play in the NFL for 20 years, to have 7 Super Bowl rings, to be a future Hall of Famer, to have $100 million contract to work for Fox, to call games.
Right.
All of that stuff works out.
Yeah, and you're right, and that's a great point, because I'm definitely not saying that he's having the success because he's a Christian, but what I am saying is, like, sometimes when you have like moral convictions that other people don't have on a higher level, it helps. And Tom Brady had those same convictions, but it was just with in a different way. But you're totally right.
Yeah, and so again, the Texans sweep the Rookie of the Year honors there. So congrats to the Texans. Congrats to all the winners. Honestly, like, they did something this season that got them noticed to be, honored at a huge event, by the way, which was actually really well done. In my opinion, the NFL did this really well. They had Keegan-Michael Key hosting it, which was awesome. I loved his interaction with Tommy Tuds. Funny like a clown. What you mean?
Wait,
funny?
I didn't see it.
Amuse you? It was hilarious. It was great.
I'm definitely watching it.
You got to watch that. If you guys haven't, definitely take a look at that. One other thing I did want to talk about, because Kyle, both of our franchises had some people in this. The NFL Hall of Fame inductees, we had a total of 7 people who got inducted into the Hall of Fame during the NFL honors. And I'm going to list a couple off here, and we're going to talk a little bit about him. Dwight Freeney. Dwight Freeney, he was on the Colts. He was on the Falcons. Had just under 300 solo tackles with 49 assisted tackles. He played 16 seasons, 125 and a half sacks, 4 fumble recoveries, 1 Super Bowl, and 7 Pro Bowls in his career. So Dwight Freeney gets inducted into the Hall of Fame. Congratulations. Dwight Freeney was a fucking force, man.
Yeah, it kind of feels like, wow, it took so long. Mm-hmm. I mean, Dwight Freeney was a player that I always knew growing up, kind of like Edwin James. Edgerrin James. Edgerrin James. Yeah, I knew I was saying it wrong. Names. But Dwight Freeney was the guy on the defensive side of the ball that was the leader of that team. And he was there for 10 years, you know, and he made a huge impact. So he definitely deserves it. And yeah, congratulations, Dwight Freeney. I'm sure Peyton Manning will have a speech or something come out soon.
Oh yeah. He's gonna have it for sure.
He's a class act.
Oh yeah. And we had another former Houston Texan get inducted into the Hall of Fame. Wide receiver Andre
Johnson. Let's go.
Johnson. This Andre Johnson was just ridiculous. What is it here? Damn it. What? That's over 14,000 receiving yards, 70 receiving touchdowns, a monster, and one of the guys during that Houston Texans era where, you know, you knew who he was, you knew his name, you knew how impactful he was. So Andre Johnson getting inducted to the Hall of Fame, you know, great job for him. And again, the Texans get represented once more in the Hall of Fame inductions.
Yeah, and I was gonna share something. It's only 10 seconds, but I was so excited that you said that because I almost forgot. And that's kind of a coincidence that this ties in. But remember how I said growing up, my dad's friend was Kevin Walter. He was a receiver for the Texans. Mm-hmm. Well, Kyle Shanahan during press week said something, and I'm going to play it.
Oh, let's see it.
It's muted. Sorry. All right, here we go.
And I got to pull with a real good team that people didn't realize was good yet with Matt Schaub and Owen Daniels and Andre Johnson and Kevin Walter. We had so many good players.
Kevin Walter,
shout out, dude. So much respect. But I was like, that's crazy. I wonder if he knew that. Wait, was that announced today, or was that maybe why he was talking about that?
For you're talking about like who was the guy who was inducted?
Yeah, because I only saw this clip on Twitter, but I didn't see the whole interview, so I don't know what they asked him. They could have asked him like, how does it feel like coming here from your beginning where you were in Houston? Or you could have said Andre Johnson's going into the Hall of Fame. Was it announced tonight, or was that announced like on a different day?
So I think a lot of people maybe a couple days ago knew who was going to be inducted. And so Andre Johnson and a couple others were definitely one of those. Yeah, for sure. That were already like, this guy's going to get inducted. It's been a long time coming, and this guy's going to get inducted. So
Rick, I'm sure you don't want to brush past there's another guy, right? There's
a few more that I want to talk about for sure, but
I know which one you're most excited about.
Yes, I am. But I want to get to a former Denver Bronco first. Randy Gradishar, who was a linebacker for the Broncos. I believe he was a middle linebacker, if I'm not mistaken. He was for that Orange Crush defense there for the Broncos. So that's why I said, like, Hall of Fame inductions, you can't have an NFL event without the Broncos and Bears not being mentioned. Like, come on, without them being mentioned. Of course not. So
we're connected. We're connected for sure.
We're connected.
But yeah, he was the heart of the Orange Crush defense. I remember getting I was probably 10 years old, and I got a Denver Broncos DVD for Christmas, and I went to my room and I watched it immediately. It had all kinds of stuff like the drive, the 99-yard drive John Elway went on against Cleveland in the Dog Pound. He won Defensive Player of the Year in 1978. he was that whole defense was pretty insane. Todd Davis, they had Steve Atwater. Now that's not my generation, so of course I only know the big names, but Tom Jackson was definitely one of them, and Randy was I feel like he was kind of like not given as much credit as some of the other guys.
Yeah.
And it's awesome to see him get his flowers because that defense was absolutely insane. And it was a long time coming, but the Orange Crush is now going to finally have its first Hall of Famer.
Yeah, and he had 20 interceptions in his career. Like, that's a lot of fucking for 10 years, dude. That's a lot. I mean, and if we go by today's standards, like maybe it's not a ton, but really it is quite a bit for a 10-year career. And he won 1 Defensive Player of the Year, like you said. So just all around congrats to him, because he was one of the guys that was kind of like on the end of not really getting it, but is now one of those guys who's in the Hall of Fame. Like you said, Orange Crush gets their first Hall of Famer. Another guy that got in and was been going through a lot, actually, a Bear during that just legendary 1985 defense, Steve McMichael Mongo. Mongo was one of those guys on that Bears defense that was an absolute stud. He had cancer. He was going through a lot of stuff, but was actually finally cleared of cancer. He's in remission or out of remission, whatever it is. So
I know
congrats
it's like
to him.
5 years. It takes 5 years.
It takes a really, really long time. He was struggling. He had a bunch of old Bears there. They're like, being there for him while he was struggling. But hey, now he's in the Hall of Fame, and it's something that was definitely a long time coming for Steve McMichael. So congratulations to him. And now let's move on to another guy, Patrick Willis, one of the most feared middle linebackers, former 49ers middle linebacker. That guy was an absolute force, dude. Patrick Willis was a name. And he was like during that time with like Brian Urlacher,
Ray Lewis.
They
were the big three.
They were the big three. Yeah. So Patrick Willis finally getting in. Like, congrats to him, man. He finally got in.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was going to say one last thing that people didn't know about the Broncos middle linebacker. I didn't want to cut you off, but he is actually one of 10 linebackers in NFL history to have at least 7 Pro Bowls. So, when you look at this, and this kind of translates to Patrick Willis, I don't know how many he made it to, but linebackers don't really go to double-digit Pro Bowls, and let alone 7. Only 10 linebackers in the history of the NFL. Isn't that crazy? Only 7
ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Pro Bowls.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So Patrick Willis has got to be there.
Oh yeah, 100%. And Crafty, yes, it was ALS. It wasn't cancer. Although, what is ALS exactly?
ALS is Lou Gehrig's disease. So that's what my high school football coach had, and there's no cure. And basically, your body just slowly shuts down. You lose all of your muscle capabilities until eventually you can't walk anymore, and you move to a wheelchair. And it's a death sentence. It's really sad.
And that's what McMichael Mongo had. So the fact that he's getting better is just amazing. So good for him.
Yeah, maybe the technology changed since I was in high school 10 years ago,
Yeah, good. It's a good thing, too. It's just a great step forward. And, of course, there's a couple other ones. One of them is actually a former Bear, but most importantly, because the Panthers need a win here, Julius Peppers has been inducted into the Hall of Fame. Julius Peppers, another guy, former Bear. We signed them
long-time Packer.
Long-time Packer for about a year. Former Packer, former Panther, former Bear. He was just a monster on that defensive line. And I remember when the Bears got him, I was so excited. We had him for about 5 years or so. On a ridiculously rich contract. And it was like, well, we need to shore up the defense because that seems to be the only thing the Bears are good at. So let's bring in a fucking all-timer, future Hall of Famer, Julius Peppers, and he's finally inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and you look at some of these other inductees, like we just talked about the linebacker for Denver playing in 74.
Mm-hmm.
Julius Peppers is only 44 years old. He was born in 1980.
Oh my
So
God.
so yeah, he's definitely, I mean, rightfully so. He like we're getting to that age where do you remember when we were kids, we didn't know anybody that was, well, we knew like kinda, but there's a lot of people in the Hall of Fame that we just didn't know because we were
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
We're getting to an age now where our favorite players as a childhood are all getting inducted, which means we're all getting older together. But it is
Shut
cool.
up. You shut up.
It is cool to see somebody that I grew up admiring the way they played the game make it in, and he deserves it.
Yeah, 100%. And now my favorite,
Jay Cutler.
Jay Cutler was finally inducted, the scariest returner of all time. If you kicked him the ball, he was going to the house. The only player in the NFL to return the opening kickoff of a Super Bowl for a touchdown, Devin Hester has been inducted into the Hall of Fame. Much respect. 100% like deserved on his end. We talked about it, I think, Kyle, for a little bit. I think last year when he was eligible for the first time, we said if you're the best at your position, the greatest of all time, you need to go into the Hall of Fame. That's really just as simple as it gets. Now, clearly, Devin Hester was doing all this before the rules changed on the kickoff, punts, all that stuff. He was returning failed field goals for touchdowns. Is just how dynamic.
But that's not why he's better than everyone else. That's not it. He's just better.
He's just better.
That's a cop out to be like, oh, but there's not as many returns. If there was, you still would never see what Devin Hester has done. I remember playing him. It's a good, time to tell a little quick Devin Hester story. I remember when the Broncos and Bears were playing each other, and I remember we punt the football, and the whole time the announcer is like, okay, it's going to be a directional punt, obviously most dangerous guy in the league. No, they punted it right to him. And what did he do? Hits up the sideline, makes a couple people miss. And I'm like, no, gone. Touchdown. And I'm like, why so they learned their lesson, right? They were like, all right. So we ended up having to punt again. And it's like, okay, this time that shit needs to go out of bounds. The problem was they didn't, and he returned it again.
That was when Jay Cutler was on the team. Or no, he was still on the Broncos.
He was a Bronco.
He was a Bronco.
I'll never, ever, ever forget that.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
One of the scariest men on the field.
Real quick, Nick. Julius Peppers actually was a Packer in 2015, so he wasn't in Super Bowl 50, but you might be thinking of DeMarcus Ware, who was inducted, I think, last year. DeMarcus Ware came from the Cowboys, and they both, I think had an equal impact. So maybe him is who you're thinking of. But yeah, Rick, when you saw this, were you like, it's about damn time?
Yes, and the thing is, it's like he should have been inducted his first year. So for me to say it's about damn time, it's like that's how great he was. That he was the best kick returner and is the best kick returner of all time. So for him not to be in his first year, yes, there was a ton of great names last year, but for him to not be in it, to not be inducted as the best, greatest kick returner of all time, it was criminal. It was criminal.
Do you think it had something to do with the fact that we have, not that I'm aware of, and I follow pretty close, but I've never seen a special teams player besides like a kicker. I'm talking like a punt returner, because he was still a weapon on the field, but his bread and butter was returning kicks.
Yep.
And I just don't think that there's been situations where somebody is inducted just for their special teams abilities. It's normally like a defensive or an offensive player. Do you think that was probably part of the reason?
I 100% think that, because it really, like you said, it's not something that we necessarily like look at and be like, oh, yep, that's exactly why, because it had never been done before. Deion Sanders was amazing at returning kicks and punts. And there was one other player, and I'm forgetting his name at the moment, who also had a record.
Oh,
Deion Sanders was also up there.
Do you remember what team he played for?
No, I really don't remember, because I know Deion Sanders played for the Falcons, and I can't remember who this guy played for. If some of you guys in the chat,
Was it in our lifetime?
I think we, at least from what I remember,
Josh Cribbs was really good. Josh
Cribbs was good, but it wasn't Cribbs, although he was up there. But we hadn't seen the type of impact on a game like Hester before. Again, you had your sporadic Deion Sanders returning, punts for touchdowns, but in his rookie season, Hester was already breaking records. You know what I mean? Similar to what CJ Stroud did this year. He was doing that in 2006. So, again, I can see why there was a little bit of hesitancy to be like, well, he's a kick returner, but he was also wide receiver. So is he going to go in like this? And how much of no, he made an impact every time he touched the ball. The only person to return the opening kickoff of the Super Bowl for a touchdown. The Colts were stupid to kick to him, but they ended up winning the Super Bowl. So I guess it worked out.
Let him keep learning.
Let him keep learning. So I do think that was something that played into him not going into the Hall of Fame his first year. But it's just, you have to look at the impact he made over his career and how he changed how special teams was done.
Yeah, and I think you might be thinking, I'm really trying to crack this code for you. I think you might be thinking of Gale Sayers, because
he was Dante Hall. That's who I'm thinking of.
Okay, that was the other guy. Oh, I was gonna say
Dante
Leon
Hall.
Washington. So Dante Hall. I knew it started with a D.
Yeah, Dante Hall, Kansas City Chiefs returner. Yeah.
Yeah, but Devin Hester was in a league of his own, and that's among all these great people. But Gale Sayers to this day actually holds the record for highest career kick return average, 30 yards. But
really,
it was really, I think Devin Hester, he was great at returning kicks. Probably the best ever. But if I'm not mistaken, wasn't punt return even better?
Oh, I think so. I think his punt returns were even better. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I remember. I remember that.
Because I remember he did it like twice against the Packers. He did it against the Rams. He did it against the Arizona Cardinals in that famous, we let him off the hook.
Yeah,
game against the Cardinals, where he returned the punt for a touchdown, and the Bears ended up winning that, being
they
down.
Are who we thought they were.
And we let him off the hook.
If you want to crown him, then crown him.
So again, just like the Bears were well represented in this Hall of Fame induction, as well as the Broncos, and really in this entire NFL honors, the Texans were as well. So, congratulations to everyone who won the brand new Hall of Fame inductees. Very Bear heavy this year. But congratulations to everybody who was honored at the NFL Honors Award. So congrats to everybody.
And just like a PS, do you know what happened to Devin Hester? Because he only had 10 punt and kickoff returns total. But I was like, I thought he had more than that. Especially when you name multiple games, he had multiple. It's kind of weird, right? Yeah. And he only played 28 games.
As what do you mean?
That's like his career, 28 games.
No, definitely not, because he was on the Bears until.
So NFL.com says the Bears' Devin Hester has 10 punt and kickoff returns, 4 touchdowns in just 28 games, and holds the record for most kicks returned for touchdowns in a season with 5.
So in a season with 5, yes, but you're just looking at his Bears career probably.
Because that's all I remember him as.
Yeah, because he was also with Atlanta in 2014 and 15, and then ended his career in Baltimore in 2016.
Wow.
I didn't know that. So let's see. Okay. Devin Hester played 11 seasons for 4 teams, Bears and Falcons. 4 teams. I think it just has 3. Either way.
Yeah, because they're saying he played in this many games, not necessarily he was on this many teams.
Yeah.
because like starting, like being back there as an active player, I think is what they're saying. Like 28 games he started as a punt returner. It seems low though. It seems so low.
14, 16. So 37 minus 16 is, let's see, 10, 14 plus 7 is 21. So he had 21 total touchdowns returning kicks. And those are kickoffs, punts, and I believe one failed field goal against the Giants, because all of his other touchdowns were receiving touchdowns. So yeah, I think you were just looking at the Bears stats, but his career, again, one of the reasons that he kind of, in a sense, fell off was because he changed the entire kicking game for the entire NFL. You know, like you weren't really kicking kicks to a guy like that anymore. You were directional. I mean, even look at the Super Bowl. He never got a, straight up kick to him that entire Super Bowl against the Colts, because they learned
the open
kickoff.
Yeah. You're going to learn today.
You're going to learn today. So yeah.
But yeah, remember last year, it was like there was no precedent for any player like this getting into the NFL. And I will say on a closing note, Devin Hester, probably the most unique player in the Hall of Fame.
Oh yeah, definitely the most unique player in the Hall of